Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about programming concepts, so let's get into it. So the question in question was, Fredrik, is there anything in programming that you think has gone a bit too far, or something that isn't, like, it's just, well, I'm not going to say a waste of time, that's not what this person meant. It's more about, is there something that doesn't make any sense, pretty much. So the short answer is, I can only really today, if at the top of my head, think of one thing that I think is basically a proof of hype taking over logic and reason, and that would be micro frontends. This is the dumbest thing that I have ever heard of. It is so stupid that I'm almost angry. Because I'm not angry at the people who started up this thing. I just truly feel sorry for whoever is going to who's going to try to adopt this entire workflow in the fashion that this has been promoted. Because if you do, I mean, there are use cases for certain parts of this concept, but if you go all out, then I wonder where, I really wonder who came to this conclusion that this is a good idea. And the reason why I got kind of engaged in this is because one of my coworkers, I was very worried at one point, because a few of my coworkers were in discussions about this idea of micro frontends and a new framework that is going to allow that to happen. And I just sat there and I thought to myself, if they add this in, because the motivation was literally this, oh, this is super useful because then we can decouple our teams even further so everybody can choose their own tools. And I just sat there and so you think that it is a good idea to decouple what is in practice a monolithic application, because a UI is a monolithic application. Now you can build it as parts. You can definitely distribute it. You don't have to, like, just because you have a web UI, you don't actually have to have everything in the same big bundle. You can splice things up, but it is still one large unit of something. And the basic idea of especially this framework was that, and this was the selling point, you can use whatever framework you want to do whatever you want. So what they're basically telling you is that the benefit of using this is that you can pretty much create each of these components, each of these pages, depending on team, in Vue, Angular, React, or jQuery if you fucking want to do that, or whichever. And when somebody states that, and the first thing I heard, thought to myself when I heard this was, one of us is insane. Either the author of this framework is insane, or I am insane. Because in my mind, what they're basically telling me is that it is a good thing to separate out a monolithic application with the shared dependencies so that you can use whatever framework you want. That is the benefit, that's a good thing. But in my mind, what's actually going to happen is that you are going to create 3 applications at the same time. You're literally going to squeeze in Vue, React, and Angular into the same payload. So you're going to basically increase the total bundle size of the code, of the amount of JavaScript that you are going to ship is going to increase by 3-fold. Because of what? Because for some reason it is unreasonable to ask a team of people to align on what tooling to use. I mean, just imagine it yourself. If you have a few teams that want to do whatever they want, they can start adding in duplicate dependencies, so it's going to start to become a problem where you may have collisions between different versions. You might be shipping 3, in a worst case scenario, you may be shipping 3 versions of the same package at the same time. Because if you don't have anybody in charge, which is kind of the point, you're not going to have some type, that's another nightmare, trust me. Because I can immediately hear the counter argument here, which is going to be that, oh, Fredrik, just because you have 3 different teams doesn't mean that you don't have any shared dependencies. No, this is absolutely true. You are correct about that, but it is a damn much harder job to keep X amount of other teams who basically have the mindset that, hey, we work as a silo, we just do our own thing, to get them to align on something and to make sure that there is no, like, because basically every story that they work on, this may happen. They might just all of a sudden say that, oh, we're going to use this library, and you know, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and all of a sudden you have two versions of the same package, or you have something like that. And then the next argument is going to come, which is what I was speaking to my coworker about, and he's like, this was just at a hypothetical level, and he was saying, well, you know what, we could actually have an automatic resolution system where we just bake together all the different dependencies in the same package JSON, and then we can look at the versions and resolve that automatically. And I sat there and I'm like, so your solution to this problem is to create another tool to solve the idiocy of the decision that you're about to make. The solution here is to not do this. This is the solution, because there is literally no real, like there's no value. There's no value apart from maybe, and this is the thing, that there is a use case for this. And that use case would be if you were to have the same mature, if you will, idea behind this as microservices on the backend actually did get to after a while of failure on quite a lot of company sides. Now we kind of shuffled out that trend very quickly, and the trend was that microservices used to both be raised to the skies for how flexible it is, how dynamic it is, how innovative it is, and so forth. And one of the strongest selling points was that you could use whatever language you wanted for any team. It's just that when people started to realize that, shit, if you have 200 microservices or something like that written in 7 different languages, it's getting a little bit complicated to synchronize all these models and make sure that everybody can communicate and make sure that all the people that you hire know all of these languages to a fairly equal degree. So it became a little bit of a maintenance nightmare and hiring nightmare. So people kind of stopped this idea, and they just kept the microservices container idea and are now trying to keep the amount of languages down. This idea of microfrontends builds on the same concept. Right now we are basically trying to slice out all of the UIs into different components, and there is a value to that. If you can get everybody to use the same framework, the same dependencies, and so forth and so forth, there is a value in that you can ship sections, that you can version sections of the code base. That does have a potential benefit, because then you don't have to be afraid that you caused a regression when you, because that's one of the really shitty things about JavaScript. If you change a component that is being used on quite a lot of pages, it's sometimes hard for you to figure out if you broke something, and you might have to go and regression test the whole thing. So if you had an ability to change a section of a page that your team is responsible for, ship that with the different versions of different components or so forth, then you can actually you can build quicker and you can deploy things without having to go and regression test the whole application, because your change is scoped to a very specific component. So that could have a potential benefit, but there are quite a lot of other ways to solve this sort of problem. So what I want you to take away from this is that, at least for me, this is the best example of when people have taken some concept too far, where at this point I feel like people are basically, it feels like something that was invented by JavaScript and front-end people who have absolutely no understanding whatsoever of how to structure a code base. It feels like it's like the tail of a long hype that microservices brought along, and now people are just trying to, it's like we slap micro on something and then it's a good idea. I just think that this is getting silly. I'm sorry, it's how I feel about it. But I am admitting that there is a possible use case for this, but I will argue that the real solution to this sort of problem, a sustainable way of solving this problem, is much simpler to get to. And the risk of doing something like this is literally that you will fuck up honest to God, I will never cease to be amazed at how quickly people can figure out new ways to make front-end even worse than it is today. Because honest to God, all of these things that we have as issues seems to be self-inflicted. We can solve all the problems in front end, we can actually have nice projects, but we need to stop this bullshit where people are trying to reinvent new ways of doing something that they don't even have real proof is going to make a positive impact. This seems to be just another way of doing something without any proof whatsoever. So of course it's going to become super popular. I shudder if that happens, and I actually did say to my coworkers in a joking manner, if you force this onto our project, I'm quitting this job. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that, but I'm sure as hell thinking about it. Have a great day.